everybody to the February 20th, 2025 Planning and Zoning meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will start off with our vision, mission, and core values. Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small-town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. Today, we will highlight the core value of practicing mutual respect towards fellow council members and city staff. I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Matt, second by Neil. All in favor?
Aye.
And we will move on to the adoption of the January 16th meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? Are there any comments?
Great recap.
Move the minutes be accepted.
Second.
Motion to accept by Neil, second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
And the minutes are adopted. We will now proceed with public item, which is text amendment 2024.03, the solar text amendment. I will introduce Chester to the podium.
Good evening. Hope you all doing all right today. Tonight I will be presenting to you text amendment 2024.03 solar energy system for solar farms. You guys saw this back in November of 2024, and so I'm bringing this back for your final recommendation, and just to present to you what staff has been able to fold together based off of your feedback, ESB's feedback, and the applicant's feedback. A little bit of background. Pisgah Energy is the applicant. They're proposing a text amendment to permit the use and installation of solar farms, solar energy systems, solar arrays, etc. The purpose of their application was to reduce the cost of ground-mounted, commercial scale ground-mounted solar panel installations here in Belmont. And the application was submitted back in 2024. Currently, we permit roof installation solar panels, but we don't have any provisions for ground-mounted solar panels. So, in the beginning, staff had just researched, just a little, still a part of the recap, we researched and did a cross-jurisdictional reference regarding which municipalities have similar regulations for SES and kind of look for what would overlap. And I want to give you a timeline of where we started, where we've been, and where we are currently. June of 2024, my apologies, we received that application. And November of the same year, we did our preliminary research and presented that at ESB. The following week, same week we did it, we showed that research to you all. And then in December, you all have requested a update email. 2 nights ago, we showed the final text and submitted that to ESB for their recommendation, and they approved that with 0 modifications. And tonight, our goal is to present this final text to you and have your recommendation. So on the last meeting, you all have requested some of the key takeaways were to flip the front and rear setbacks for Class 3 SES systems, change the allowable zones for Class E SES systems. We had some designated by special use permit only. Some that you all did not want to have the same process. We streamlined those, and you'll see that later in the presentation. Also, we know the board has a reverence for stormwater, and so we wanted to make sure that we had stormwater protection. So we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with the NCDEQ standards that contribute to regulating that and ensuring proper flow for SES systems. As well, and we also provided you that update email that we mentioned earlier in December with the Q&A session that we hosted with ESB, as well as the additional questions that you all had regarding SES systems. So with that, a couple of things have altered, but one key thing that we eliminated from the last presentation that we gave you to this presentation, we are no longer amending Chapter 4 as adding SES as an actual building type, and you'll see how we were able to fold that and add additional regulations and kind of still provide those provisions, but change how we're altering the text to not overcomplicate things, as well as put ourselves into a sticky situation when it comes to creating new uses and restricting uses in different zones, as well as, you know, some of the regulations that's going on right now in North Carolina regarding prohibited uses. So we decided instead of amending 5 chapters, we amended 4. Key takeaways of the changes that we made in Chapter 2, we had to provide a definition to facilitate SES systems, And we also expanded the definition of essential services by including SES solar energy systems in that. One key difference in the wording that we have for SES systems that has changed, we initially, so this is a little bit nuanced, but we initially wrote it specifically for solar farms. We wrote it now to encompass solar farms and also roof-mounted solar systems, because we already permit those. We also wanted just to add, we had a catch-all, kind of a general definition that speaks to the components of solar energy systems, whether that be ground-mounted, whether that be roof-mounted. That's what our definition encompasses, but then breaking it down by classes within the essential services umbrella was where we were able to actually apply different provisions for the usage and the size of the SES system, whether that be roof or ground-mounted. Both of them would have provisions in stone. Before, we were just permitting like roof solar or roof solar panel installation. We would permit that as kind of a upfit of sorts. Now we actually have provisions for that and speak specifically to those things. Chapter 3, one of the key takeaways that we would change in this chapter, we added a new chapter, chapter 3.10.4. It establishes level 1 and 2 energy systems for a commercial, as accessory uses to a residential and commercial structure. It provides a new chapter to actually facilitate that, as well as puts those cooling, batteries, all those different mechanical pieces, puts those under the same established ordinances for mechanical equipment that you see in our accessory structures. That's what that looks like in our new code. As you can see, we have specific provisions for roof mounted here at A, and we also have different provisions for residential and commercial uses. And we'll get to 6.2, but we also have additional regulations that one would have to refer to when they would look for ground-mounted solar energy systems. For chapter 5, we provide specific district provisions for all classes of SES. Initially, we had the applicant's text had level 1, level 2, level 3, and we had broke each of those levels down to different zones that they were permissible. You all communicated that we could consolidate some specifically for the purpose that they're for, as well as be a little bit more flexible in the zones that they're allowable, but specifically for utility scale, power plant scale, you all wanted to, we had heard that you all wanted to see some sort of process for vetting those and which zones we'd actually put them in. All will require the uses, all will require for a utility scale will require a special use permit for the ICD, BCD, and SR and RR zoning designations. That you could find those additional regulations at chapter 6 as well, we'll get to, but this is where we'll show the essential services, little drop down bar. It shows that we classify class 3 as an essential service as well, utility scale, subject to the issuance of a special use permit. Any SES system for an accessory purpose would be subject to the same provisions for the respective building type. So whether that's a home or whether that's a shopfront building, should they have any space for that, they would be subject to the same accessory structure provisions for that zone, or for that building type. For chapter 6, some of our key takeaways was that it provides additional requirements for SES as a essential service, and specifically in a ground-mounted fashion. For the primary use, we would provide provisions for sizing and placement provisions, as well as a connection and utility agreement. Ted McGavran, the ESB subcommittee for this text amendment, he actually has an extensive professional experience with this, and he was able to guide us on some of those documents that utility providers would need, and some of those things that would help us, and some of the ordinances that would help us ensure the environmental protection of some of Belmont's, waterways and the ground that the SES system would need. And so this just details where we shifted everything down in the essential services tab, where we showed wireless communications have their own provisions. We just added essential services to that, so we removed that header, shifted that down one, and then provided for B, we provided those specific provisions for SES systems.
Chester, can you go back?
Can you go back one more slide?
So it's all right.
They just took the heading out.
Okay.
It's in there somewhere.
So you can see here, class 1 and 2 energy systems must be an accessory use to the primary structure of a parcel. See that new chapter we created for additional details. Principal use of a parcel for a solar energy system would be limited to class Cs only, which are limited to the zones I mentioned prior to you, ICD, BCD, SR, and RR. They would require a special use permit. It would be subject to the same sketch plan review process, development review process as outlined in chapter 15. Any accessory structure as in a building to support the building, supporting like the SES system, whether it be on that large of a scale, needing like someone to monitor the cooling systems or monitor some of the readings of the SES system. They will be specified in chapter 4 as, which comes from the building type, specified in, the building form in chapter 4. I'm so sorry. Trying to think on that. I'm gonna circle back to that. It does also provide placement regulations for ground-mounted solar systems, solar energy systems specifically for that primary use. We heard that you all wanted kind of lower. I think I had initially 9 feet or 10 feet. We lowered that maximum height to about 6 feet. For structures housing the equipment, we limited that to 1 story. Initially, it was about maybe 10 feet or so, but just to be consistent with some of the other buildings in our code, we want to limit that to 1 story. We flipped those setbacks that you all mentioned, 30 to the front and now 15 to the rear, and 10 with the minimum side setbacks. We also wanted to ensure that they had the correct buffers for those different zoning designations. Specifically, a type A buffer is going to be required around the perimeter of the solar energy system. And parking to support that accessory building to that system would be limited to 4 spaces on the property and must be located to the rear of the site. The applicant must submit a decommissioning plan upon applying for a SES system, just so that lets us know, solar energy system, so that lets us know that they have thought about what the long-range planning of this SES system would be. They must provide that aforementioned connection agreement with the utility partner, as well as comply with North Carolina General Statute 130A 309.240. That also speaks to, in addition to the NCDEQ Stormwater Manual, it also provides additional provisions for that decommissioning plan and how that, and it also lists like specific specifications for what that decommissioning plan must look like. And we wanted to make sure that we were in line with other state statutes in that, and that Belmont could facilitate this while also protecting our environment long term. So tonight's objective is to render final recommendation regarding the text, approve the modifications, deny recommendations. And the next steps would preferably be to present this at the city council in March.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chester. I understand this is a text amendment filed by an applicant, not the city in this case. A is the applicant here, and B, do they have a presentation they'd like to give?
No and no.
Okay.
Have they responded to all of these changes?
They were okay with it.
Okay.
As much.
Is there,
They presented some very standard language from, they mentioned was, just the North Carolina standard, that that's where the, levels came from, but we had to fold that into, they were okay and pretty agreeable with what we presented.
He spoke in November, didn't he?
that was Ted from the ESP.
The representative was present in that meeting,
Okay.
they assisted, a long-haired gentleman.
Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay. I'll close public comment. So, first of all, I think this is great. It seems like it was really well thought through and all the details got hit. I feel like the feedback we all had in the last meeting was addressed very well. I don't have any issues with it. I don't know if anyone else does.
I just have a couple of questions. One, this is an amendment to the LDC. Is it, maybe I missed something, is there always a public hearing for these things?
Yes.
Is it just,
For text
that's the first time I've ever seen a public hearing as the next step.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, I mean, I understand that, I just never saw it. And that, the special, that's decided by, because it's a special use permit, it doesn't come back to us, it just goes right to the city council.
Yeah, special use permits are quasi judicial,
Right.
city council,
Yeah, they don't go to the planning, they don't go to the board of adjustment, they go to the
they
city.
go to city council.
The other question I had is that I didn't notice that there was any requirements on the screening.
Yes, sir, there are requirements specifically, are you talking about it for
The height of
accessory
the
use for?
screening, it says you will screen by
Class
opaque
A.
this or this, or,
Yeah,
That's
that's,
oh, yeah,
yeah, the buffering has standards.
Type 1A or type A?
that's for, utility scale, and for accessory uses, it would be the screening that would be required
for the what, for the for the equipment?
This is for utility scale, power plant scale. For accessory scale, it would be what was required for that, building type.
For the, I'm talking about the ground mounted, right? We're talking about the ground mounted.
Yes, sir.
Are we, we're screening just the support equipment, or are we supporting the actual, solar arrays?
The intent was to screen the actual solar array, and, for additional, to additionally kind of shield it from view, we set it
Right,
further back.
I just wanna know how high that stuff is, or is it, you say that you're only gonna have the, maximum is 6 feet, is that right, for the panels?
Yes, sir, and they're really 6 feet. They're,
I
none
just-
of my research, I mean.
Yeah, I'm
none of
just
my
curious as
research
to
saw
whether,
them 6 feet.
whether the requirements are that the, any screen for that be at least this high up, or so many
Yes.
feet higher than?
I think that's what it is.
Let's just, can you just clarify what the type A buffer is?
Yeah.
For,
I have to look that in our code, but our type A buffer is what specifies kind of that height.
I believe it's 8 to 10 feet,
Right.
but we'll wanna make sure in at least 30 feet deep, or, wide on that, unless somebody's asking for relief, but typically, like, sometimes there's some discretion if somebody puts a fence, but it is higher than 6 feet, I'm absolutely convinced.
Okay, okay. I just, if it's a solar, you wanna make sure you don't screen out the
No, that's fair.
Right.
sunlight, that's all.
Right, and that's the distance requirement, so that's one of the things we had talked about with the applicant too, is typically what we would anticipate seeing is some sort of screening and then some spacing, so that the actual shade from the screening doesn't impact the solar. And so you'd see a buffer and then some green space and then the actual equipment.
Good.
types of questions were about panel height. You did do research that we're not gonna come back and have relief or have to go back to the 6
No,
foot.
no, and honestly, the only reason I said 9 feet as, the maximum height, or 10 feet as the maximum height to store the equipment, is because they're typically stored in 9-foot, 8-foot shipping containers. They're typically no bigger than, about 4 feet, but I wanted to overshoot it and undershoot it personally.
I think that's fine, just, we don't want to come back in 8 months, a year, to revise the 6 feet to say 8 feet, because technology changes. And then the second question is about parking, and I understand everything until you say located to the rear of the site. And I don't know if we need to restrict where parking is, if we have the type A buffer around the entire parcel. It just sort of, like, the parking needs to go where that accessory structure is, and based on topography or access to the site, that might be at the front. And I wouldn't want to, again, come back or have conditions when it says it needs to be at the rear of the site.
I guess
Where it
it's
could
like-
best serve the site closer to the front of the site.
I think it just, I mean, for me, it just needs to say limited to floor spaces on the property.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
not-
I mean, is that a detail that could be added as a condition, especially permit anyway? You're right, you're right.
Where's the parking now?
Is it
just for
But hold on, no,
Type three?
level 1 and level, is this just, no, this is.
Three.
This is specific to level 3.
This is just 3.
Yeah, because I don't know that a 1 or a 2 would even require that additional equipment necessarily.
Or park.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like industrial scale
Okay.
systems.
My only thought there is, the rear is a minimum of 15 feet. How long is a parking space?
Well, it would need to within that 15 feet. No, outside of that 15 feet, right?
Yeah, the 15 was the setback, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about everything
I-
inside of that.
I'm not me personally, I'm not a big fan of setting specifics. We wanna try to keep it as general as possible with the parameters that still meet the intent, so that we don't have to come back with conditions, or if someone needs to change something, then it's.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, it seems to me that it says, type A buffers for said, planning staff would also recommend the maximum height for the structures be limited to 6 feet. Parking level for level 3 SES would be restricted to 1 space per 300 square feet of office space associated with the structure, period. Why?
That's fine.
Why limit it to the front side, back, outside, and just take any restrictions to wear out? And then when they come before the city council, they can say where it's gonna be, and the city council doesn't like it, they can break it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what
So I'm hearing is remove that parking restriction as for where the parking must be located.
The
Yeah.
location of it.
Location of parking,
Because you're not saying where the structure has to be
either.
either, so
this is,
it may work out that it's on the side, but you're gonna make them park,
yeah, it's just,
yes.
Does that make sense?
we're involved in agreement here.
Okay.
Write this thing down.
So, did staff, was staff able to get that amendment, or those changes, or do we need to say it in the motion?
If you could say it in the motion, just to make sure that we are, absolutely capture everything that you are hoping for, but the other thing we can do is, I think we have an extra copy of the text, so we can mark it up and make
Okay,
sure.
it's solar systems B, number 2, subcategory 3, subcategory 4, you got that thing labeled curiously. I always
That
went
is true.
letter, number, letter, so I think you need to
You can
renumber
change that.
these things to A, B, C, D under subparagraph 3, under number 2, under B, to where it's parking required for the operation and maintenance will be limited to 4 spaces on the property, period. So change numbering and delete the last phrase from now, new number 3D, if you follow.
All right, picking up what you're putting down.
That's all I had.
Sounds good.
One other thing, very thorough. I completely understood where you're coming from with the presentation. I know we had some comments, previous meetings, and maybe I should say this after we vote, but like, very good job, Chester. I mean, that, understood exactly where you're coming from.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Did you want
We try hard.
to say something about, you seem to be concerned about the wording chapter 4? I
I'm no
noticed-
longer concerned.
Say again?
I'm no longer concerned.
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're good, man.
Any further comment, discussion?
Move we accept the recommendation with, as modified, with changing subparagraph B, solar energy systems, subparagraph 2, subparagraph 3, and renumber the ones underneath that to A, B, C, and D, and change number D to eliminate the last phrase, which says parking must be located to the rear of the site.
Motion by Neil,
Second.
second by Steve, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. And that will have a 5-0 unanimous approval to, I guess, accept it as modified.
Stay up there. We need one more motion that it's in the public's interest and consistent with land
That's correct.
use plan.
No, I got the first one, you can see the second.
Do not have the statement of consistency.
Do you have that?
Do I?
I tried to get it on the machine, but it keeps saying I don't have to verify it on you.
Is that?
We printed some extras. That might be it. Chester,
It's not in the
he wanted to,
traditional format.
yeah, sorry.
Close enough.
It's on this right here.
I got you squared away.
Make a motion that we approve the text amendment as modified of the land development code associated with petition TA 2024.03 solar energy systems and amendment of chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 5, and chapter 6. That the proposed text amendment is reasonable and in the best interest of the public. is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan for goal 6, infrastructure, as well as goal 7, environment.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Neil, all in favor?
Aye.
And the statement of consistency passes unanimously 5-0. With that, I will reiterate, I appreciate the process that went through. We saw that back in November, had a lot of discussion on it. It seems like there was a lot of back-end research done on it, coordination with the ESB. I think that's the process all of this should go through, and we appreciate the thoroughness, so thank you.
One more thing about that, there was additional correspondence between our meeting in November and this meeting, which also included involvement with ESB. It was just emailed to the board, that we were allowed to see the process happen, not just at the meetings, but also some intermediate communication, which keeps us informed of how things are going and allows us to further evaluate before we get here and hear the presentation.
I really appreciate that. You tried hard. Definitely want to give a shout out to my team. They definitely supported me doing that. My first time, can you tell I'm nervous? So,
I couldn't tell, man, you were doing a great job.
There you
do what
go.
we can, but really appreciate that, guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we will move to other business, which there is none on the agenda. So Tiffany looks excited to say something.
Sorry, we
Open
do,
the floor.
we didn't specify it on, like, as a descriptive item. But one thing that I will note is that we were going through some of our paperwork, and just as a matter of process, we realized that we have some new faces on the board, and we also have some faces that have been here for a while. So just to make sure we update all of our paperwork, we're passing out our code of ethics, and just want to make sure that we have current copies signed for everybody on the board. We'll get with the members that weren't able to join us. But for those of you who have signed, it might have been a while since you've read this one, and for those of you who have not yet, I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same playing field. So appreciate you guys helping us with that. The other thing I just wanted to see if you guys had any feedback on for us before you adjourn is the text amendment that was just presented by Chester was the first time we ever drafted a text amendment utilizing our new software, Encode Plus. So as you can see on the screen, you have some blue text here. Those are actually hyperlinks that will allow you to scroll over. So when you get the PDF or when you got the PDF, it should be, if you were reviewing it online, where you could scroll over and actually see links to that stormwater design manual or see links to different definitions that are defined in the code. So just wanted to point that out. If you guys have any feedback as we're trying to format that new software, I know you guys did the bulleting and just trying to format that for consistency, we appreciate that. And if there's anything that you think as you're reviewing these things would be helpful to make sure that we're hyperlinking, that's a new feature. So just wanted to bring that to your attention and say we welcome any feedback to make it easier and more transparent.
Yeah, as someone who uses that on a frequent basis, it is far better than it ever has been. So it's very good. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. That's all I had.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion by Neil, second by Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
And we're adjourned.
28.
Right,